Welcome to my channel, and more importantly, my Pokémon region known as the Fyrún Region. A fantastical place with a variety of diverse and breathtaking landscapes, each housing magical and mighty creatures known as Pokémon, wielded by fierce warriors known as Pokémon trainers. Over the next several videos on my YouTube channel, I plan to take you on an epic adventure through my imagination as I'll fully explore the sagas of the Fyrún region just as they would unfold in its conceptual games Pokémon Brain and Pokémon Brawn, introducing all of the characters you'd encounter on your journey and their Pokémon teams, including some familiar faces from all over the Pokémon world. But first, you must select the starter Pokémon that will be accompanying you on your quest. You have the grass cub Bearry, the fire pony Foaloga, and the bubble crab Crabubb. So which of these three will be your secret weapon in the Fyrún region? I've been exploring the Fyrún region in an ongoing series here on my YouTube channel and on my Instagram page at Mykel_regions, commissioning a variety of talented artists to help bring all of my ideas and designs to life, and take you on an exciting journey through my imagination in my own little corner of the Pokemon world inspired by Iceland and Norse mythology. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure to hit that like button, and if you'd like to learn even more about the Fyrún region, make sure to check out some of my previous videos and subscribe to my channel for even more Pokémon content, as the Fyrún region is only the tip of the iceberg, as I have a variety of other exciting projects in the works that you can't find anywhere else. As most of you know, my last video introducing the region's two pseudos concluded the main Fyrún Pokédex, with the exception of all the legendary Pokémon of course, as well as all the new Pokémon that will be introduced later on in the Fyrún region's two conceptual DLCs, the Queen's Beauty and the King's Bounty, alongside a bunch of brand new characters, legendaries, forge forms, and each DLC will even take place in brand new locations. So while it may feel like the end, fear not, there is still plenty of Fyrún content left to explore over the next several months. But now that we've made it this far, the next several videos here on my channel will delve even further into the story of the conceptual games Pokémon Brain and Pokémon Brawn, as we explore all of its locations and some of the real-life places in Iceland that they are inspired by. And while exploring these biomes, I'll be discussing some of the Pokémon, as well as the characters you'd encounter in each location, and their roles in the story, and even their Pokémon teams throughout the various stages of these hypothetical games. I'll also be getting a little bit into my creative process and some of the inspirations behind a lot of these designs. So I cannot wait to start this next chapter of the Fyrún saga with you, because I could not be more proud of all the characters and stories I came up with for the region. But first, I'd like to give a big shout out to the phenomenally talented artist, trainer Matt, who I commissioned to draw all of these characters and forge form weapons featured in this video. He's one of my best friends and biggest supporters in this community, not to mention one of my favorite artists as he's just so versatile. I absolutely love working with him, especially on character designs. We just work so well together, and the man never misses. So please make sure to give him a follow on Instagram, as he has his own amazing region he's posting at the moment, inspired by Greece, called the Arcadia region. Thank you so much, Mots. It's always a pleasure. And of course, please make sure to go check out and support all of the other amazing artists that I commissioned to bring all of my Pokémon to life, many of which will be making appearances throughout this video, as I get into each trainer's Pokémon team. The links to all of their pages can be found in the description below, so please go give them some love. Without further ado, your journey within the Fyrún region starts in the cozy town of Apruna, inspired by a variety of charming villages or small towns in Iceland. This quaint town of log structures is found on top of a snowy mountain, and is home not only to the player, character, and protagonist of the story, but your childhood best friend and rival as well. It is also home to your mother, Professor Aspen's Pokemon Lab. Now that the stage has been set, I'd like to formally introduce the main cast of characters, starting with the player character, of course, the hero of the story, with their canon names being Eric or Emma. Both characters' outfits are inspired by classic Icelandic outfits with a modern, Pokemon-esque twist, such as the Pokeball designs found in their hats. Like Scarlet and Violet, the player's default outfit changes colors depending on your version. So in Pokemon Brain, it would be mostly blue, while in Pokemon Brawn, it would be mostly red. Regardless, both outfits feature the colors not only of each version, but of the Icelandic flag, blue, red, and white. These are also the colors found in Norway's flag, as well as the flag of the Faroe Islands, which is relevant as these beautiful islands are not only located between Iceland and Norway, as well as Scotland, having adopting a lot of their cultures, but are also the inspiration for the enchanting new location of the Fyrún Region's first DLC, while the second DLC will take place on a series of floating islands high above the Fyrún Region, separated by a gorgeous sea of clouds, a frontier only accessible to the fiercest Pokemon trainers. But back to the protagonists. I chose to give them blonde hair as that's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of an Icelandic person, and more importantly, so they both look related to Professor Aspen, who is their mother within the story. Emma, however, has brown eyes and more strawberry blonde hair, while Eric has lighter blonde hair and blue eyes. So there is slight differences because, unlike my last region, where I had the two protagonists be twins and both be part of the story, only one of these characters, the one you choose, will actually be part of the story. So they are not actually related. And of course, the characters would be fully customizable, just like in most of the recent Pokemon games. You also wouldn't be asked if you're a boy or a girl, but instead what your pronouns are, and the outfits or hairstyles aren't gender locked, so non-binary players would have full access to be whoever they are. And as this is a conceptual game, I would also like for these games to include being able to change your character's body type and height, as I'm surprised Pokemon hasn't done that already. And you'd not only get to select the appearance of your own character in these games, but your rival character as well, in addition to their name, like most of the previous games, with the rivals' default names being either Kristoff or Christine. The default option for these characters have fiery red hair, which I chose to give them to fit their personalities, and as red hair is common in Iceland. Their outfits are also inspired by modern-day Icelandic clothing, such as sweaters and boots, so they are comfortable in the region's diverse terrains and harsh weather conditions. I chose to feature the same red or blue in their outfits, as like the protagonists, they will join either Team Brain or Team Brawn. I also really wanted to have them in confident and casual poses to showcase just how smug they can be. Despite being overly cocky and competitive, your rival has always been your best friend since you can remember. You've always loved Pokemon and gone on little adventures together, having snowball fights, sledding down the hills. You've been there for each other when no one else has. And as the years have gone by, the two of you have gotten more and more competitive with one another, but there's always been a deep love for Pokemon and unbreakable bond between the two of you. But that will all change when you both are finally gifted your starter Pokemon. Since it's been a while since I reviewed these three in my very first video over a year and a half ago, to save anyone from having to go back and watch three separate outdated and cringeworthy videos, I wanted to give a real quick recap on these three, as they will be popping up quite a bit throughout this video on two of the main characters' teams. Not to mention, this is the most important addition to your Pokemon team. So here we go. Bearry are lovers, not fighters, always giving hugs. However, when they feel they must battle, they splatter berries from their collar on their face like war paint to show they mean business. If you choose Bearry as your partner, you're in for a cuddly companion. That is until it evolves into its evolution Trebjorn. Trebjorn are unable to grow berries in their bush-like fur since evolving, making them more aggressive as a result. They feel as if they have lost a piece of themselves and often express their anger on the battlefield. And Trebjorn evolves into Berserker. Berserker are overly protective of their territory as they draw strength from nature. While they are gentle giants when they are provoked or engaged in battle, Berserker lose control as they fight in a trance-like fury with claws strong enough to tear through steel. It's inspired by Norse berserkers, savage warriors, who were said to fight in a trance-like fury, and were often depicted wearing bear pelts, much like the grassy bear pelts worn by Trebjorn and Berserker. And to further reference the Berserker's violent fighting style, Berserker's signature move, using its monstrous claws, Verdant Slash, is a grass-type version of Thrash or Outrage, while more accurately a physical-type version of Petal Dance. But I felt a ferocious move like this, that can't be stopped and causes confusion, really captured that trance-like fury associated with Berserkers. Berserker's Forge Form weapon is also a battle axe, much like the axes used by Berserkers. As far as starters go, I have always been partial to grass types, so Bearry would no doubt be my pick, but would you choose Bearry to accompany you through the Fyrún region? Let me know down below. Foaloga was a must for an Icelandic region, as the beautiful Icelandic horses are iconic to the country. Foaloga are quick on their feet, generating heat as they gallop through the Fyrún region. Their small hoofs can be heated to temperatures hot enough to forge steel and melt glaciers. If you pick Foaloga, you're in for a fiery, spirited friend. However, it does go through a slight emo phase after evolving into Brene. Easily agitated, Brene will often dash away when annoyed, leaving a trail of scorch marks behind in their wake. The intensity of their smoldering flames is fueled by their emotions. But it is absolutely majestic in its final stage, Hyseldr. Hyseldr's beautiful fiery white mane is harmless to most, but if it desires, it can be used to engulf its adversaries in a silent inferno. The 4 orbs circling its body are its 4 phantom limbs that can be called upon in battle or to gallop into the afterlife. This is a nod to Sleipnir, the majestic 8-legged horse from Norse mythology. This Pokemon almost had 8 legs, but there was just no way to incorporate it into the design, it just didn't look right. So I felt like this would be the next best thing, and a creative approach to the Pokemon as well. Hyseldr's signature move, Soul Burner, is a powerful physical ghost-type attack that brands the target's soul with the inferno of its 8 heated hoofs, potentially burning the target. Hyseldr's forge form is a hammer axe, taking inspiration from the Stormbreaker weapon wielded by Thor in Marvel Comics, as I felt a hammer would be a great way to further explore the idea of it branding its foes. I love this line as it perfectly embodies the essence and beauty of Iceland, so I'm excited to find out which of you will be traveling beside a Foaloga on your journey through the Fyrún region. Next up is Crabubb. Crabubb are curious Pokemon, leaving no stone unturned on the vast beaches of the Fyrún region. The bubbles around their eyes act as lenses, enhancing their vision so they can see enemies approaching from all angles. If you pick this curious companion, you are in for an adventure. Crabubb evolves into Nautaclaw, a play on nautical and claw. Fearless, Nautaclaw wear their armored shells into battle with great pride. They're often found in or around the Fyrún region's frigid waters, using their pincers to raid those they deem unworthy. Nautaclaw evolves into the fierce Crabubb. Crabubb command the seas with their razor-sharp claws and sturdy armored shells. Feared by most Pokemon for their fierce battle tactics, they always fight with a deep sense of dignity and respect. Crabubb is inspired by Vikings as they are seafaring warriors, with its shell being made up of Viking armor, with a bubble beard and its razor-sharp pincers resembling Viking axes. And yes, I know the horns on the helmet aren't historically accurate, as Vikings didn't actually have those. However, after being depicted that way for so long, the horned helmets are instantly recognizable, which is what you want in a Pokemon design to instantly sell that concept. So they see it and they say, oh, that's a Viking. Which is probably why the Pokemon Company, who already made a Viking Pokemon, Berserker, did the same thing and gave it the horns. I'm sure they knew this wasn't historically accurate, so if it's okay for them to do it in Pokemon, I think it's okay for me to do it. And I even tried to see what it looked like without the horns, and let me tell you, it makes the biggest difference in the design. Crabubb's strong signature move, Aqua Assault, which is essentially a water-type version of Close Combat, would be lethal, especially when paired with its hidden ability, Sheer Force, negating its drawbacks in exchange for more power. And naturally, to further its Viking themes and fully utilize its axe-like claws, Crabubb's forge form is based on traditional Viking axes. I know Crabubb originally seemed to be the popular pick when I first shared these 3 starters a while back, but that has seemed to even out quite a bit looking at all the Fyrún fan arts and trainer teams I've received since. So let me know if Crabubb is your choice in the comments below. Anyways, outside of the obvious Nordic themes, the shared theme between these 3 starters' final stages is war, fitting of the Viking themes throughout the Fyrún region, which is why if you look close, they all feature a battle scar on their designs. And to further this theme of war, they all obviously have a forge form weapon. I chose to give them all some kind of axe, to give them yet another shared theme, and because axes were the most commonly used weapon by Vikings, so being they are your starter Pokemon, I felt it was the natural choice. And I know what you're probably thinking, these 3 starters share the same types as the Paldea's starters' final stages, Grass Dark, Fire Ghost, Water Fighting. That is a complete coincidence. Those of you who've been following me for a while know that I posted these starters almost a year and a half ago, if not longer, way before they ever revealed the Paldea region, let alone its starters. So it's just a coincidence, and I don't see any point in changing it, because there's no reason starters can't share the same type. I mean, starter Pokemon have repeated plenty of the same types before. And more importantly, I just love everything about these starters, so I would not want to change a thing about them. The phenomenally talented Fungus Fakemon, who I commissioned to bring these 3 to life, and I both spent nearly 6 months working on these 3 lines to get them just right down to the tiniest details. As I was feeling a lot of pressure after the massive success of my first Fakemon region, the Loika region on Instagram and its starter trio. However, I think we succeeded, especially after seeing all of the amazing fan art and trainer teams you've produced. I've literally received hundreds of fan arts for this region alone, and well over 100 Fyrún teams, all of which are amazing, and it's actually really cool because the 3 starters are distributed pretty evenly throughout most of these teams, to be honest, which I love to see. Let me know down below which of these 3 starters would be your companion and secret weapon in the Fyrún region. And without further ado, let's see who else will be using them, starting with the person who gifts you your starter Pokemon, your very own mother, Professor Aspen. Her name Aspen is true to the majority of Pokemon Professor's last names being named after a tree species, the aspen being one of the few tree species actually found in Iceland. It's also often yellow in color, which is part of the reason I decided to give her, as well as her children, the protagonists, blonde hair. This character was actually one of my favorites to come up with, and one of my favorite characters I've ever created in general, to be honest, because I really wanted to represent those with disabilities in the Fyrún region, as I feel they are often underrepresented in franchises such as Pokemon. I also feel we don't have a lot of female professors, and the mother's role is often rather small in Pokemon games. So this character just means a lot to me for a variety of reasons. As far as her design goes, of course she sports the classic Pokemon Professor's white lab coat, but since she's your mother, I wanted to give her a warm and welcoming outfit inspired by those worn in Iceland, complete with the scarf and boots. I chose to give her earthy colors like brown and green to fit her love for nature, as the Fyrún region is full of natural beauty and diverse biomes like those found in Iceland. And yes, she's in a rodent wheelchair, which was created by genius innovator and bug-type gym leader in my first Fakemon region, the Loika region, known as Zola. You'll even be able to spot this rodent wheelchair in her Pokemon gym in my Pokemon fan games, Pokemon Order and Pokemon Chaos, as a little Easter egg, and there will be plenty more Fyrún Easter eggs and references, as well as character and even possibly Pokemon cameos in these fan games as well. Anyways, this wheelchair is not just for aesthetics. The wheels on her rodent wheelchair can actually transform to allow her to safely explore the entirety of the Fyrún region, to freely conduct her Pokemon research in terrain she wouldn't normally be able to, such as rocky terrain, icy terrain, snowy terrain, or even around the region's active volcano. And it can even help her zip around the battlefield, wielding a forge form to give you some tough love. But more on that later. But the chair, which features red and blue, was done intentionally alongside the green in her outfit, so she has a color from all the starter Pokemon in her design, as she not only gifts them to new trainers, but will be adding one of them to her own team. And as for her role in the story, I think it goes without saying that it's pretty instrumental given the fact that she's both the Pokemon Professor and your mother. While she can come across as both strict and overbearing at times, she's also very nurturing to both humans and Pokemon alike. No matter how busy she's been with work over the years, she's never neglected you. In fact, she's rather smothering and somewhat overprotective. As you'll see later on when I introduce her Pokemon teams, she especially has taken interest in Pokemon that are incapable of evolving, as she's curious to know why that's the case for so many Pokemon species, especially as she can relate due to having her own disability. So her use of single-stage Pokemon and how she makes the most of them is rather symbolic, as it reflects how she's made the most of her own circumstances. Now going back to the story, you spent most of your time growing up with your best friend playing in her Pokemon lab, and she'd also take you to on some of her excursions through the Fyrún region as well. So you were never far, and as a result, you both fell in love with Pokemon. But as much time as you both spent in her lab and around Pokemon growing up, she has been hesitant to give either of you Pokemon of your own for reasons unknown to you. But you both suspect it has something to do with the incident that paralyzed her. For years, you've watched other trainers much younger than you receive a Pokemon from her and set off on their own Pokemon journeys. In fact, it's even your 16th birthday when you start your adventure, and you've begged her countless times to give you a Pokemon, but she's stuck in her ways. She says it's too dangerous. Until later that day, while conducting some research on the snowy slopes of the Howling Hills together after being attacked by a flock of Arcturn, normally she'd have her partner Pokemon Shakaru with her to help in situations like this. But it's currently cleaning up around the house for your birthday dinner. She falls out of her rodent wheelchair and in the chaos dropping the bag with her starter Pokemon in it, and is unable to escape the relentless Pokemon as the bag is too far out of reach. So you come to her rescue, instinctively reaching into her bag to use one of the 3 starter Pokemon inside to scare the wild Pokemon away. Impressed by your bravery and how well you worked alongside your Pokemon, later that night she invites your best friend over for dinner to celebrate your birthday, and as a token of her appreciation for helping her, she finally gives both of you your own starter Pokemon. Of course, you would be gifted the one you already bonded with on the slopes, while your best friend, known for being quite competitive, of course picks the starter strongest against yours. While your mother decides to look after and adopt the starter Pokemon that wasn't picked, being the one weaker to your starter. And naturally, after finally being gifted your starter Pokemon, after waiting for so long, you and your best friend will have a heated Pokemon battle right in her Pokemon lab like you've always dreamed of, being the first battle of the game. Your mother is clearly elated as she can see just how happy she's made both you and your best friend. Of course, she's still reluctant to let you set off on your own Pokemon adventure, but is put at ease knowing you will be traveling with your best friend, who she loves like a second child. Little does she know though that your friendship will soon be tested. As if this birthday couldn't get any better, she also gifts you 10 Pokeballs and a Rotom watch to register all the Pokemon you encounter and catch on your adventure, and in doing so helping her in her own Pokemon research. She also promises to check in periodically, and she will do exactly that, constantly calling you or even showing up, and often embarrassing you even. You would finally be able to battle your mother in this game as well, as she would act as a secondary rival, challenging you to the occasional battle to assess your skills and development as a Pokemon trainer. And with the exception of her mainstays, like her ace Pokemon, the cuddly companion Shakaru, are her starter Pokemon weaker to yours, and the duplicate form super effective against your starter, her team would constantly change depending on her location, always using a new single stage Pokemon from that area. In fact, before saying your goodbyes as you go to finally set off on your Pokemon journey through the Fyrún Region, she stops you to challenge you to a Pokemon battle to make sure that you are really ready for this. In this battle, she'd start off using the starter Pokemon weak to yours, and end the battle using her ace Pokemon Shakaru. After defeating her, she gives you a big hug, as this is a really big moment for her. She's finally letting you leave the nest, and as scared as she is, she wouldn't be doing this if she didn't feel you were ready. After leaving home for your journey through the Fyrún Region, which once again has no set path, it would be an open world game. Although you'd have to travel down the same snowy slope you rescued your mother on, this location known as the Howling Hills, and is essentially what would be considered Route 1 in most games, but just like Paco Path in the Paldea region, it's not actually called that, but it fits the same niche as it's the first location you must pass through in order to really progress throughout the region, and of course it has what would be considered the region's classic Route 1 Pokemon. In fact, this location would have a wide variety of Pokemon to encounter and catch right out the gate. However, some of them are either really rare, or possibly found in certain times of the day, or even version exclusives. It's also important to note, with the exception of the Lamini line or Pika Clone Shakaru line, all of these early game Pokemon have Forge forms in their final stages, as would your starter Pokemon of course. So you'd already have a fairly decent selection in Forge form weapons, especially as most of these Pokemon do have the potential to evolve rather early on, which is nice as well, as you'd be able to start using Forge forms right out the gate. After Route 1, you'll arrive at a snow-topped forest reminiscent of the wooded areas often found in the early sections of Pokemon games like the Viridian Forest. This location is filled with several festive Pokemon. There are also a good number of ice and ghost types in this location, as I wanted to introduce some decent options for these types early on in a Pokemon game for a change, as they're usually found in the later game. After making it out the forest, you'll arrive in a festive town that looks like it was ripped right out of a Christmas movie, as Christmas is huge in Iceland, with their own Christmas traditions, folklore, and creatures like the Yule Lads or Yule Cat, on top of the ones we celebrate like reindeers and elf. They even have real-life reindeers, and according to most Icelandic people, real-life elves as well. They pretty much celebrate Christmas for the majority of the month. And this town is actually inspired by a real town in Iceland. In the weeks before Christmas, this town's center is transformed into a winter wonderland with Christmas decorations, music, warm drinks and snacks, with plenty of festive activities for all ages. It is here where you will be greeted by your mother, who wants to assess your and your recently acquired Pokemon skills in battle right here in the town center. She will start the battle using the starter Pokemon she adopted, which is once again weaker to your starter, also using some festive Pokemon, such as Duplicate, being the form super effective against the starter you picked to help even the playing field a little bit. And of course, end the battle with her cuddly companion, Shakaru, whose speed alongside its electric and ice type attacks should make for a good challenge. After your battle, she will gift you with even more Pokeballs and tell you there's someone she'd like you to meet. Together, you'd go to a pub in town for some hot cocoa, where you'll be accompanied by Dark-type specialist and Elite Four member Ìsak, who is a master swordsman despite being blinded since birth, guided through the darkness by his honed senses and Dark-type Pokemon. Like all of the Elite Four in the Fyrún region, he specializes not only in a Pokemon type, but one of the region's 4 Forge Form weapon types, his being the Slasher type. However, the Forge Form phenomenon found throughout the Fyrún region is considered by most people today to be taboo or barbaric, only used by the strongest of trainers, such as those within the Fyrún Pokemon League, only so they are prepared to protect the region from any impending threats. Your mother and Ìsak warn you of this turf war that is currently being raged in the Fyrún region by rival groups Team Brain and Team Brawn. And despite their young appearance, they double both as misfits and a legit evil team in the form of a cult of impressionable teenagers that worship and blindly serve a manipulative divine Pokemon in search of power and praise. Only acting as mere pawns in the turf war between these respective deities plans to conquer the Fyrún region. And now that the region's champion, who's commanded by his own divine Pokemon, is growing weaker by the day with age, they are set on building their own army of fierce Pokemon trainers to overthrow Champion Odin and his divine Pokemon Edlodin, and gain control over the Fyrún region. And unlike any other evil team in Pokemon, these teams are unique as, once again, you actually join one of these teams, being determined by the version you pick, and then go to war with the other team. Which is why the titles match those of the teams, as that's pretty much the main premise of these conceptual games, as you try to complete your team's objectives, recruit new members, and work your way up the ranks alongside your childhood best friend who is a member of the rival team. So this will create a big wedge between you two, putting your long friendship to the ultimate test as you're each caught in the crossfire of this high-stakes turf war for the Fyrún region. But I'll actually get into the events that unfold, leading to you joining your respective teams in the next video. But I wanted to let you know where the story is heading, because this rivalry and friendship between you and your childhood best friend is the heart of the story in the Fyrún region, and the major conflict. Most people seem to think this is an innocent competition between unruly teenagers, but Ìsak, being a member of the Fyrún League and working under Champion Odin, whose ace Pokemon, the divine Pokemon Edlodin, is omniscient, has hinted that there's a lot more going on beneath the surface, and that this turf war poses a great threat to the Fyrún region. Your mother wants to make sure you are trained to properly wield a Forge Form, to avoid anything happening to you like what happened to her. Because while these battles may not be as dangerous as I'm sure most of you may think, they still are obviously more intense than your normal Pokemon battle, because actually being involved in the battle, you're forced to be more aware of things such as your surroundings. And of course, it takes a lot more physical training and preparation on your part, which is done in the form of a mini-game within Pokémon Brain and Brawn, which is similar to the super training of previous games. This is also necessary in order to brand most Pokemon with a Forge Mark, which is needed for Forge Form capable Pokemon to be able to transform into their Forge Form weapon. However, some Forge Form capable Pokemon, such as legendaries, event Pokemon, or those caught in raid battles, would automatically have this brand mark. This process can be used to super train any Pokemon, by the way, even those without Forge Forms, in order to raise their IVs and EVs like in past games too. Ìsak, being your mentor in how to properly wield a Forge Form weapon, would give the in-game tutorial on this special super training in the Fyrún region, which is known as Way of the Warrior. And of course, being that she's your overly protective mother, and once again her accident, she really wants you to know how to properly wield a Forge Form and participate in battle. So she asks her longtime friend, the Dark-type Elite Four member, Ìsak, to help mentor you in how to properly wield a Forge Form, because she hopes while you'd never actually get caught up in this trend or turf war, she's also a smart and realistic woman who would rather be safe than sorry and prepare you just in case. Because once again, she knows what it's like to be young and impressionable. You'll find out later throughout your journey that she once was quite spontaneous as well, which is why she ended up falling in love with Pokemon in the first place, as she would venture around the Fyrún region doing reckless things. Speaking of Forge Forms like Galar and the Paldea region, the Fyrún region would have its own form of raid battles. You'd find giant rune stones throughout the Fyrún region, transporting you to raid dens with rampaging Pokemon in the same manner as the previous games. However, a lot of these raids would be led not by a rampaging Pokemon, but instead by an Iron Knight or Golem known as a Raider. These Raiders are not human. They were actually created by the divine Pokemon Edlodin, the father of the Forge Form phenomenon, in order to stand up to Team Brain and Team Brawn, as they are led by the two divine Pokemon seeking to overthrow it and conquer the Fyrún Region, as well as a way to test trainers in order to find a worthy successor of wielding its power, since its current partner champion Odin is growing weaker by the day with age. So these Raiders are magical beings that will wield a Forge Form weapon just as a trainer would. And like regular raids, the Pokemon Forge Form weapons they use would vary, with some monthly events to get special ones like starter Pokemon, legendaries, or shinies in the form of 7-star raid bosses. Once defeating the Raider, they will collapse, as that Forge Form weapon will turn back into its normal Pokemon form, as you will now be able to capture it, and if you do so, that Pokemon will automatically have a Forge Mark, allowing it to access its Forge Form, as you wouldn't be required to do the Way of the Warrior super training, as you would have to with most Forge Form capable Pokemon, before being able to transform them into their Forge Form weapon. In my headcanon, this is because this requires a true bond between the Pokemon and the trainer, as well as peak physical and mental stamina from both of them as well, hence the Brain and Brawn titles. So if the Pokemon feels that their trainer is not ready to enter the battle, they're basically putting their foot down in order to protect them. Or maybe the Pokemon doesn't feel they're ready to enter the battle, as they're being trained in the Way of the Warrior as well. Regardless, it requires a bond between the Pokemon and trainer, and they both have to be on equal playing fields in order to access the full power of the Forge Form mechanic, as it really is a team effort on both of their part. I'll get more into how the Forge Form mechanic works, both in and out of battle, as well as raid battles, in a future video featuring all of the region's Forge Forms, so please stay tuned for that, because it will be awesome, as I will not just be telling you how it all works, but with the help of the talented artist Yes Sir, and his gorgeous 3D models and animation, I will actually be showing you how the Forge Form mechanic works, just as I've always imagined it. So I'm almost like your Isaac. Speaking of which, since he's a master swordsman and represents the slasher type within the Elite Four, he will let you borrow either a Chillinx or Snowwarg sword to battle him, depending on the version you choose to play. This battle will take place in a large passing and open field within the other dry end of the forest. You'll encounter some new Pokemon here and even have your first encounter with Team Brain or Team Brawn before your Forge Form training with Isaac. In this battle, you'll actually battle a member of the team you'll end up joining, so the same team as your version. So if you play Pokemon Brain, you'll actually get to battle a member of Team Brain here, whereas if you play Pokemon Brawn, you'll actually get to battle a member of Team Brawn here. And having defeated them with such ease, your skills not only left quite the impression on them, but Isaac, who shows up at the end of your battle. And while he can't actually see, he heard enough, including the grunt scurrying away in shock. He then heals your Pokemon before taking you through the aforementioned Forge Form tutorial, but first, he gifts you the Battle Bracer key item, which is necessary in order to use the Forge Form mechanic. He would not only walk you through the Way of the Warrior super training, which is used to train both the trainer and the Pokemon, but afterwards he will even battle you and give you a tutorial in how to properly wield a Forge Form and how they work in battle, as the mechanic is quite a bit different using a Forge Force gauge, and there's even sections of the battle that aren't even turn-based, where after each player makes their moves, there'll be a limited time section where you can go RPG style and just go attack your opponent to do damage outside of your normal moves. But I'll get into all of this later on in a future video. In this battle, Isaac will use Festival, as well as their ace Pokemon Rascarade, which would instantly be turned into their Forge Form weapon for this tutorial, as you'd once again be using either a Snowwarg sword or Chillinx sword loaned to you by Isaac for this battle. After this battle, you can catch some of the new Pokemon you'd encounter, which are actually a lot of fighting and psychic types in this area, including some version exclusives, which I felt was fitting given this area is your first encounter with your affiliated team and version. Or you can go back to the Christmas village to heal your Pokemon. Okay, where were we? Yes, we're in the Forest Passing. If you go to the left even deeper into the forest, there's a Candy Cottage area swarming with sugary sweet fairy-type Pokemon, mostly food-based Pokemon such as Duplicate, which like the majority of these fairy types can actually only be found in this location. So you won't want to miss it, especially if you're a fan of fairy or food-type inspired Pokemon. Of course, there will be a couple of other rare Pokemon around this gingerbread home, drawn to these sweet Pokemon for you to catch as well. Inside this giant gingerbread house, created by a bunch of Duplicate, is also the cookie cutters necessary to change Duplicate's form, similar to how Rotom uses appliances. So this is yet another reason to check this place out. And if you make it out of this forest area, you'll end up in a coastside town featuring Iceland's famous turf homes, found in a handful of its villages and towns. This is the first place you'd be able to encounter Aquak, the Puffin Pokemon. But much like the actual Puffin, Aquak can be found all over the coast of the Fyrún region, so if you don't manage to catch one, don't worry. As adorable as this Pokemon is, it's pretty much the Zubat of the region. You're gonna get sick of it after a while. Beside the village, there's also a small beach connected to the glacial lagoon with ice shards scattered around, as it is inspired by Iceland's beautiful Diamond Beach. Here you'll acquire the app on your Rotom Watch to call a riding Pokemon Fyrinian Lapras to surf, which will help you explore the glacial lagoon and Iceberg Islands. You can even go back up and explore some of the icy locations above Apruna town, as these areas are filled with rare and powerful Pokemon, especially those of the ice and ghost typing. But I'll get more into them and the rest of the surrounding areas in a later video, as you'd have to venture back here later on in the story for some key moments. As the Arctic Runes, based on Iceland's famous Arctic Hedge, is where you'd battle your game's mascot legendary and divine Pokemon, as well as have your final battle against your rival, in the epic conclusion of the games and this story. While I personally recommend taking this little detour, you can also decide to ignore these areas altogether and head straight to the region's largest city, inspired by Iceland's capital city, where I'll actually be staying this fall when traveling to Iceland to see the Northern Lights and the Fyrún region for myself, since I've fallen in love with Iceland after all the research I've put into this project. I'll even be creating a little travel series documenting my travels, embellished with my Fyrún Pokemon and lure, so it's as if I'm actually venturing through the Fyrún region with my friends, taking all of you with me. So more to come on that, but I could not be more excited. My itinerary is insane as well. Anyways, this beautiful city is filled with many amazing museums, shops, and restaurants that I personally can't wait to go to, and it would be no different in the Fyrún region. Here you'll meet another main character in the Fyrún region, the Dragon-type specialist and fashionista Ragnar, and their partner Pokemon Drekion. While fascinated by you, Ragnar will challenge you to a battle, as they are totally insulted by your lack of fashion sense. In this battle, Ragnar will use their shiny Dormer, which they've been unable to evolve as they don't want to join either Brain or Brawn, as they're much more focused on beauty, and of course their ace Pokemon, Drekion, the Dragon-type evolution of the Fyrún region. While Ragnar still finds your fashion to be quite questionable, they are very impressed with your Pokemon battling skills. And you two share a good laugh, as they'll kindly take you to the boutique in the city, where you'll be able to change your hairstyle, outfit, etc., like in other Pokemon games. So while they have a good heart, Ragnar's not exactly subtle. They will recommend going to the Dragon-type gym to battle Dragon Queen Fantasia in a fun-spirited, fashion-forward battle. However, if you actually try to do so at this point in the game, you will find it's closed. And for good reason, because as most of you know, Ragnar actually moonlights as Drag Queen Fantasia, a revolution that won't actually be made until you come back and battle them in the mid-game after some family drama with two of the admins from each team that happen to be each of Ragnar's brothers, trying to force them to join their team, unaware of the fact that they have already forged their own path as a gym leader. So this reveal is very big for Ragnar. Next to the city is the lagoon, based on the world-famous Blue Lagoon's hot springs and spa resort found in Iceland, another place I really cannot wait to go to. Here you'll not only be able to relax and get some really useful tips or advice from several tourists or trainers hanging out in the water, but if you look hard enough, you'll find the occasional Pokemon in these warm waters, like the water fire type Syrimp. So I definitely recommend hitting up this area for the aesthetics alone before heading back to New Bloom Fields to catch a variety of grass, bug, fairy, and flying type Pokemon, most of which are exclusive to this beautiful area, such as the Spunky Torpal or Purpunk, based on the purple lupin flower found throughout this location, as well as in several fields in Iceland. Here you'll also have your first rematch battle with your rival, who's caught new Pokemon and has also had their own encounter with the rival team that they will later end up joining. So this encounter will help plant the seeds for that, just as your encounter with your own future team will end up doing for you. So you both exchange stories of your encounters with these two groups before having a fun-spirited battle of your own. Your rival will start the battle with a Lamini they caught on Route 1, followed either by a Grumper or a Furzin, depending on your version, which they also caught on Route 1, and foreshadows their future involvement of either Team Brain or Team Brawn, as they are version exclusives, and one is a special attacker and one is a physical attacker. And of course they will end the battle, once again with their starter Pokemon, which has gotten stronger since you last battled them. This is obviously before either of you join your respective teams and things heat up between you two, which is why I think is the perfect place to leave off for now in this video. The Fyrún saga will continue in my next video, introducing new locations, characters, and their Pokemon teams as the story unfolds. This video, like I said, got into more of the main characters of the story, and mostly set the stage of what's to come later on, but there's still plenty more to see of them as the journey continues. So that's it for now. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to hit that like button. Feel free to leave a comment down below to let me know which of these characters is your favorite and what you thought of the video. And most importantly, please make sure to subscribe to my channel to keep up with more content. And please make sure to go follow and support all of the incredible artists I commissioned to make this video possible. All of their names and pages will be linked in the bio below, many of which have their own amazing Fakemon regions, such as Trainer Matt, once again the real MVP of this video, as he did all the trainer artworks. So please go give him all of your love. Thank you so much for watching and take care.